Hello, second graders. I miss you all so very much. Can't wait to see you again soon. This is our first lesson in a brand new unit. This is a unit called Greek Myths on Greek mythology. We had just finished up our unit on tall tales and fairy tales. Now, some of these characters you've heard before in first grade when you learned about astronomy with your first grade teacher, so it'll come back to you. And you'll have, a lot more of this in sixth grade. So our very first story in this unit introduces us to the 12 main gods and goddesses in Greek mythology. And it does it by following this father and son on a journey to Mount Olympus. And the father is telling his son, or retelling his son, I should say, the story of the gods and goddesses. Keep this particular story because as we move on through the unit, it will be helpful to come back and revisit some of the gods and goddesses because they do come up in future myths. Okay, so this is called the 12 Gods of Mount Olympus. Leonidas woke up early on the day of the foot races, still lying in bed. He could hear his father outside tending to the horses. He's probably feeding them, Leonidas thought to himself, and then we'll harness them to the cart and make our way to Olympia. Olympia was the site of the day's foot races in honor of Zeus, the leader of all the Greek gods and goddesses. Leonidas and his father would take their pottery to sell to the people at the races, and when they had sold all that they could, they would watch them races too. Leonidas knew that if he asked, his father would tell him again how the gods and goddesses came to be, and why he and the other Greeks honored them with races, festivals, and feasts. It was his favorite story, and he loved to hear his father tell it. But first, Leonidas had to get out of bed and get dressed. Otherwise, he wouldn't get to hear that story or see the races at all. After breakfast, he went outside to help his father, who had just finished harnessing the first of 2 horses to the cart. "Good morning, Father," Leonidas said. "Good morning, son. We're almost ready to go. Will you help me harness the last horse?" Leonidas nodded, and together, as the sun burnt away the morning fog, father and son harnessed the second horse. Once they double-checked that the horses were securely fastened to the cart, Leonidas and his father finished storing the pottery safely in the cart. Then, taking their seats on a wooden plank at the front of the cart, they started their journey to Mount Olympia. After they traveled some miles down the road, Leonidas asked, "Father, will you tell me again the story of the gods and goddesses?" "Of course, son. As you know, we're going to Olympia for the foot races held in honor of Zeus. Olympia is the home of an important sanctuary devoted to Zeus, where we celebrate him and the other Olympian gods and goddesses with sporting competitions." Now, boys and girls, by the way, the word sanctuary, that means a holy place. So the 12 gods of Mount Olympus are the most powerful of all of the many gods, and Zeus is their leader. Of course, Mount Olympus is actually far away, but this is a beautiful valley, beloved to them and perfect for the games. Their cart went over a bump, and they turned around to check their wares, or their goods that they were selling, before continuing the story. These gods and goddesses can sometimes be just like you and me. They can feel happy, sad, jealous, angry, generous, loving. But unlike you and me, they have special powers to control things like the seasons and the weather, when and where there will be war, and sometimes even with whom we fall in love. And unlike you and me, the gods are immortal. And if you are immortal, that means you never die. Now, these are the Olympians on their thrones. Now, they paused before continuing the favorite part of the story. That's how the gods are different from mortals on Earth. But do you know how to tell them apart from one another? Leonidas did know, but he wanted his father to continue to tell the story, so he said, "Yes, but please tell me anyway, Father." Okay. So, his father continued on saying, "Well, as I said before, Zeus is the leader of all gods and protects all of us here on Earth. He has a voice like rolling thunder, and he controls the wind, the rain, and lightning, which he also uses as weapons. He has 2 brothers, Hades and Poseidon, and together they rule over the world. While Zeus controls the heavens, Poseidon controls the sea, and he rules over it with a trident. When he strikes the ground with his trident, the earth shakes, and when he strikes the seas with it, the waves rise up as tall as a mountain. Zeus and Poseidon are two of the 12 gods who live on Mount Olympus and have thrones there. Leonidas and his father came to a fork in the road, and they turned left. They could now see other carts ahead of them in the distance, other vendors looking to sell their wares or goods as well at the foot races in Olympia. And what about Hades, Zeus's older brother? Leonidas asked. While Zeus rules the heavens and Poseidon rules the sea, Hades rules the underworld, or the land of the dead. Hades has a helmet that makes himself invisible, so that no one, friend or foe, can see him coming. Now, foe means enemy, boys and girls, and remember that helmet that makes him invisible. That comes up in a future story that we read. Hades' throne is in the underworld where he lives. He sounds scary, Leonidas shivered. Who else lives on Mount Olympus? Well, Zeus also has a sister who has a throne on Mount Olympus, Demeter. Demeter is the goddess of harvest and grain. She looks after all the fields and crops on earth. Zeus's wife, Hera, also lives on Mount Olympus. She is the queen of the gods and goddesses, and the goddess of women's lives. How many is that? Well, he counted them up, counting on his fingers. Zeus, Poseidon, Demeter, and Hera. Well, that's 4. Who are the other gods and goddesses that live on Mount Olympus? We have Hephaestus, god of fire and the blacksmith of the gods. Aphrodite, she's the goddess of love. Athena, the goddess of wisdom, and Ares, the goddess of war. Then there are the twins, Apollo, the god of light and music, and his sister Artemis, the goddess of the hunt. There's Hermes, the messenger of the gods, and finally Dionysus, the god of wine and the youngest of all the gods. Even though these are the most powerful of all gods and goddesses, Zeus is the strongest of all, and it is who we honor today. His father stopped the cart. They had finally reached Olympia. Spectators and vendors moved all around them as the athletes stretched in preparation for their races. Leonidas knew that many miles away was cloud-covered Mount Olympus. As the midday sun shone through some of the clouds, Leonidas imagined he could see the briefest glimpse of a palace with 12 golden thrones. That concludes today's first Greek myth in this unit. What I'm going to ask you to do now is go back to our classroom, and there is a Google Doc in there that I would like you to turn in with a pretty, I think, fun question. I hope you'll find it that way. Do not worry about spelling when you answer this question. You'll get some kind of bonus points if you actually happen to spell it correctly, and you'll see what I mean when you get there. All right, boys and girls, I'll see you soon online.